Grand Rising family. This is your host, Tisha Hillman, and welcome to today's episode of Sis We Need to Talk, which is our weekly internet show that speaks to Black women about the ways that we can have productive and fruitful conversations about some of the desires that we say that we actually want, and how do those desires manifest in the real world in terms of the intentions that we set and the outcomes that we receive. So I am very grateful to have in the studio with me attorney Talib Saber.
Thank you. Thank
you
me.
so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So why don't you tell the people a little bit about who you are?
Okay. So as she said, I'm an attorney practicing here in the state of Maryland. I also am a filmmaker and a staunch Pan-African activist. So I do a lot of community work, not only here in the United States, but on the continent of Africa and some other countries around the world.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, slight work.
Well, we are certainly blessed to have you join us today, and I'm sure with all of the experiences that you have, that you bring a wealth and breadth of knowledge that will certainly be beneficial to our conversation.
Hopefully.
So, today's topic is very, very interesting. And I really want to talk about what men want, but like for real though. And the reason I say for real though.
You ready?
Is I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because I know that can be a very, very heated debate.
Oh yeah.
Especially in today's climate of toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
But usually as a woman, we have these articles and things that cater to women about what men want. And usually these are articles and things that are written by some woman.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not saying that as a woman it's absolutely impossible for you to have any sort of clue about what men want. But my thing is this. If you have a question about what's going on with your car, you may want to go to the person or the company that designs your car,
sure.
that works on the car every day, that knows the idiosyncrasies of the vehicle. That might be helpful. So it's interesting that we don't take the same approach when it comes to relationships.
Facts, absolutely. Because I think a lot of it may have to do with ego. The fact that we don't want to consult each other. Like if I have an issue with someone, I'd rather not address it, but have all of these ideologies about what the person may feel. Maybe ask people who are in my close circle without ever stepping to the person of whom I have the issue with. And I think for us as a people in our relationships, it's the same way, because more often than not, within this current society, we haven't really received a proper model as to how to build healthy relationships. So then we're repeating what has been so-called passed down as culture, but it's actually trauma that's been passed down. And we don't know how to distinguish between the two.
You see, now you got my pensive face on. This is my pensive face. So, okay, you said, if I'm hearing you correctly, some of what we've been taught that we think is culture is in fact generational trauma.
Absolutely.
Damn. I mean, wow. So tell me, what does that actually look like for you?
So that would look like, for instance, let's use enslavement as an example, right? And some things that we were taught as coping mechanisms on the plantation have been passed down as culture, right? So,
can you give me an example?
Absolutely. So, for instance, when you're in a environment in which you have no sexual autonomy of your own body, right, and you're constantly being subjected to, say, rapes, women, then you would do certain mechanisms or have certain mannerisms around men. The men who have been doing the assaulting, so that's one group, and then the men who you look to traditionally for protection that is unable to provide that. So now you may have some hostility toward those men that were supposed to protect you, and then you have had it in your mind, like, okay, well, these men can't protect me. So you pass that down. So now you're teaching the women, or your girls or daughters, oh well, this you never have to rely on a man, or you shouldn't have to rely on a man, because at the end of the day, he may not protect you, or he probably won't protect you. So you have that aspect, and then also just how so take for instance domestic violence within amongst the family. So we have this running joke within our community about getting whipped growing up, but a lot of the things with regards to that, and also how our parents may react to something that frustrates them, may be out of something that we learned on the plantation. So instead of being able to sit down and talk about it, you may have to lash out because they think in their minds they're protecting the child, because again, their reference point is being sold, selling your child down the river. So it's better for me to correct them as opposed to getting him snatched away.
Now, this has gone into a level of depth that I don't know if I was ready for. Like, for real. I don't know if I was actually ready for the level of depth that what did I tell y'all? I told you a wealth and breadth of knowledge in this young man here. But that's fascinating, because I think sometimes we do forget that behavior and all of these things have a historical context.
Absolutely.
And so the things that we do, everything down to the holidays that we celebrate, to the way that we use language, to the way that we relate to one another.
Teach.
These are all culture that is passed down, but passed down from what? Because it makes sense to me that if you came from a family where abuse was the norm, it changes the way that you are able to interact with people, because your normal is not normal.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Your normal is not what most people in society, or most people even in your own little you and I verse, you know what I mean, are experiencing.
Absolutely.
And, I talked about this briefly, but I know that a lot of the women that are listening to this can relate to what I'm saying. When I was in either college or grad school, my circle of friends, I realized that 8 out of 10 of them have been raped or molested.
Wow.
Most of the time by a man or someone in their own family. I recall a friend of mine, and this happens more often than you think.
Yeah.
Where she was molested by her mom's boyfriend, got pregnant. The mom raised the child as her sister. And so to the world, she had to tell the world that her child was actually her sister. And so think about the levels of trauma. Like, that's just levels on level. Like, there's levels to this ish.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there's so much trauma there. From, the grandmother herself to even formulating a thought to say, this is how we're going to cover up his stuff. But without considering the child. We do that a lot. Where we have mothers who will choose their boyfriends or their husbands over the child, thereby subjecting the child to trauma yet again. Because it's like, not only did this person violate and rob me of my innocence, but then the person who was supposed to protect me protected my abuser.
Exactly.
And so these are the types of traumas that we have that make it very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult for us to, in my opinion, to sometimes have these conversations in ways that we can relate to one another.
Absolutely. And even to that point, so here in Maryland, you have on the Eastern Shore, it was once one of the largest breeding farms. And for those who may not know, we're talking about breeding. I don't know this. Yeah, so breeding, like you would do cattle and sheep and goats and things, they would breed human beings in the Eastern Shore. So you have, of the migration patterns, you have those that were from the Eastern Shore would migrate to Baltimore, particularly to the area Sandtown and Winchester. So in that area, you have a high percentage of incest and just in family, sexual relations, abuse, rapes, things of the kind. So again, it goes back to putting in its historical context. And if you have been bred this way, and then it's like embedded in your DNA and is never corrected or addressed, then you have just the reproduction of all of these behaviors again. So for us to really combat this, we have to be upfront and honest. And the statistic that you dropped about 8 out of 10 women, that is definitely probably the norm, unfortunately, with regards to the makeup of how many our women have been molested or assaulted in their families.
And it's while that certainly is startling, heartbreaking, appalling. I say these numbers and I say these things not to cause us, any kind of, reliving the trauma, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I realize as an abuser of rape and sexual assault at the hands of people in my family and strangers at a young age, which is usually what happens. Women, our little girls are sexualized, and we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. Our little girls are sexualized at a young age. And think about it. Black women, being who we are, you know what I mean, being the earth mothers that we are, we got it going on.
Exactly.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's to know that you are already genetically going to be, what you are going to be. That's all I'm saying about that. But then to know that you start developing, especially with the foods and all the hormones and things like that they put in food, little girls are looking older, much younger.
Yes.
Like, my little niece, when she was 9 years old, people thought she was 15.
Wow.
Little girls, I'm hearing about little girls starting their periods at like 10 years old. 9, 10 years old. Dang. So that means at 9 and 10 years old, our babies can have babies. And again, we can go on and on and on about that topic because that's a very intense topic when we talk about, the poisons and things like that in our environment and our foods that are causing some of these issues on top of the generational trauma, as you say, that has been built into our DNA. But I say these things because I do think it's important to kind of shed light on these things because, like I said, the thing that I saw in my family, well, that's not necessarily 100% accurate, but the thing that I saw more often than not was families being complicit in the cover-up and not protecting our babies and protecting these men, right? That's a problem. And so my thing is, if this is what's been done in the dark, we need to bring these things to light. Because only when you shed light on things can you actually address it, look at it, and heal it.
Absolutely. And even to that point, so we know that, say, women have covered up what has been going on within the family, I would charge the men who are not or have not participated or have done anything with regards to that to challenge and check these men as well. Because a lot of times you'll find that you may have, well, I don't, but you may have people who know people who do that, or like just predators or abusers, but would never call them on it or check them on it. It's a famous singer right now that has been, still making records. I'm trying to figure out why, based on some of the things that have come out about him. But
are you talking about your boy who actually went and like singing into the audience, like, if y'all got your shots, your passports, come to the United States with me? Did you see that video?
No, I didn't see that video.
So I think what he's talking about, in case y'all don't know, the elephant in the room is R. Kelly.
Of course.
And again, our community, I don't know what it is, but we go out of the way to protect these men who are toxic. And I hate to use that word in the context of this because, there are some men that are toxic. But by and large, I would say that most of our men are not. They get that moniker because there's an agenda, but there's a whole different topic.
Right.
But So there's a video of R. Kelly, if you guys haven't looked at it. He is in Ethiopia, I believe.
Is he?
He's somewhere on the continent, because it's, black folk, right?
Right.
Somewhere on the continent. I'm pretty sure it's Ethiopia. He's singing at a concert, and he's saying, you know how, like, he'll make anything sound, harmonic or whatever, being the Pied Piper and all. But he's singing something to the effect of, if you have your shots and your passports, come to the United States with me.
Oh my God.
So, but think about how long, though, black people caped for this man.
Yeah.
We didn't say anything when he married Aaliyah.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us didn't believe it. We didn't say anything when he's pissing on a little girl in a recording. We barely said anything when the news came out that he'd raped somebody. We kept quiet when girls were actually escaping from a dungeon that he had created. We are still giving this man a platform. Why is he still able to have concerts?
It's a microcosm of the greater society, our community at large anyway, because it's like, if you can, he's a celebrity, so it's like, so long as he's making good music and he's serenading you and all these things, then it's like, and maybe it's because they can identify with an aspect of maybe, that either happened to them, or they know a situation similar to that and it wasn't addressed. But again, I'm going back to, because I'm speaking from a male's perspective, if we are supposed to be the traditional protectors and providers and all these things, then where are the men to be able to step up to this dude and be like, yo, like, no, and just cut the cord with that, and taking it back to more of a, on a basis of someone who isn't a celebrity, but just your day-to-day folk, the same thing. If we can bang on each other in the streets, on the corners and all these things, then why can't we step to those that are violating our women, and in the same regard, babies. And our babies in the same regard.
I mean, I don't even know what to say to that, but but you're absolutely right. And so I do want to talk about, our topic, what men want.
Okay.
But I think having this cursory conversation about where we are is important.
Yes.
Because we talked about creating this culture of young girls who kind of are overly sexualized at a young age. And that brings me to what I'm going to do today. Normally I do my Tisha's Trending Topics, or the 3 T's. Today I only got one, because there's so much that can come from this.
Okay.
If you guys follow, hip hop or any social media, you probably know that rapper Cardi B and her husband of a year, Offset, are getting a divorce. Word on the street is, something to the effect of, he either had or was going to have a threesome with one at China. I don't know these people.
Yeah.
But, I don't follow this stuff. I just happen to see it on my social media thing for days. So apparently he was going to have a threesome. One of the girls couldn't make it. That's so lazy. Like, how you not make a threesome? Not saying that I'm not condoning that. But what I am saying is like, I can't make it. It's not a threesome anymore. It's like that, right. I digress. But it came out. I guess Cardi B found out, whatever. How she found out, don't know. Women are some detectives. So I don't know why men cheat, because women are very, very good detectives. Anyway, so now they're apparently headed for divorce. And people roasted Offset yesterday on Black Twitter because, he said something about congratulations, y'all won, to social media, right? And people basically dragged him for that. Like, social media ain't make you cheat.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Responsibility.
Right. And again, it doesn't escape me that so often we refuse to take responsibility for our actions have consequences.
Absolutely.
And somehow we miss that. We want to blame everybody else for the state that we have created in our own lives. And we don't even stop to take a look at, what have I done to contribute to the situation?
Learned behavior. Because again, say for instance, if you grow up in a family or an environment where everybody is accountable, whether it be if you are the oldest of your siblings and your parents are working, and when you get home, it's your responsibility to take care of your younger three siblings, and they
That's how
repeat
it
that
was for me.
pattern. Absolutely, that's traditionally how it used to be. But when you have that pattern, then that's a bit of accountability and responsibility that's instilled in you. And then also, if you see those that, if you are in a family where your parents will check you on behavior and tell you, no, this is not acceptable. This is not what you do. This is not becoming of a man. This is not becoming of a woman, a wife, a husband, whatever the case may be. Then you grow up with these values and these morals to where it's like, okay, so when you start your family or you engage in a relationship with someone, you already have the tools. The problem is with our community, a lot of us do not have the tools. So we can't go into any toolboxes that we may have or skill sets in the back of our head and say, oh, well, when this situation comes up, or this situation is similar to what my dad told me, or this is a situation is similar to what my mom went through, let me pull from that positively, because we do have negative influences, but positively, to really address the issue. Then you'll have the offsets where you can pass blame and not take accountability for your actions. Maybe he was raised in an environment where that never was the case.
Well, that brings me to another point. The young women. Now, the fact that he cheated or was going to cheat, I don't know.
Right.
If he, slept with these women or whatever, I understand that the onus to be concerned about his marriage is not on the women that he slept with, because he made a vow to his wife and to his child and to his family, right? So that's something completely separate and apart. So I don't necessarily look at the women and say, oh my God, you're terrible people, you broke up a happy home.
Right.
I don't necessarily say that because, again, his responsibility was to his wife. Now, my concern with the young women is why? You know what I mean? Like, who this man is.
Right.
So why are you okay with accepting this as, whatever? I don't know if it's accepting it as a relationship, accepting it as whatever, but you put yourself in a situation where his wife has not agreed to any sort of, relationship outside.
Right.
You know what I mean? She didn't agree to this, presumptively.
Right.
So it's not like, they have this mutual, understanding that this is what's happening. The wife was completely left out. And so now you have a little girl, because I don't know how she is. To me, she's a little girl.
Yeah.
On social media crying to TMZ, which is a whole nother issue, right? On social media crying like, oh, I didn't know your relationship was that serious. Right. I didn't know your relationship was that serious. I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. Now, here's my thing. I do feel sorry for the young lady. I do, because I don't know how she grew up. Maybe she grew up hypersexualized. Maybe she believes this is all she deserves. She's only worth being somebody's mistress. You know what I mean? Maybe I have no idea, and I'm not passing judgment on that. But what I am concerned about is we've created the society that we've become okay with little girls aspiring to be sluts and whores. Their words, not mine. You know what I mean? I'm not calling a woman a slut or a whore, but I'm saying when you have something called a slut walk, and you literally have women that would have sex with celebrities and save the condom in order to impregnate themselves, to get child support, or to use it as leverage, it really makes me concerned. Like, what are we doing? And why are we okay with this? Because now, and I said this last week, now we've come to a place in our society where you can't ever say to people, what you're doing is not right. What you're doing is not helpful. Even if we're not using words of judgment like right or wrong, it's not helpful to the advancement of, anything. Now, again, if that's the intention that you set for yourself, sis, go for it, right? But most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, these women behave this way, and I know it because I've seen it, I've been it. You know what I mean? We behave this way because we're hurt. We behave this way because our expectations have been crushed. We don't believe anymore that anyone will love us for anything other than what's between our thighs. That's the truth. That is the absolute truth. That's all that I'm worth after my innocence has been taken from me. That's the only thing that seems to have value.
You see, that's something in which we need to get to the root of all of these things for, because when you have a social media platform that the word escapes me, that
glorifies?
That's it.
Come on,
that glorifies. I'm a loud one. That glorifies this type of behavior, and then it's a constant 24/7 of this media attack. Because I always say propaganda. The media is the propaganda.
Absolutely.
So when you have these depiction of women who are successful, but are successful exploiting themselves sexually, or successful in cat fights or any type of arguing and all these things, the one thing I've noticed is that throughout my travels, what we see as media and TV here is depicted around the world as that is the culture of these people. And I think that that's one thing that we need to consider, is that when we have these images come through the screen, it's not only us that's viewing it or choose not to view it, but there's those that are outside of the United States that are viewing this and say, so this is how you act and this is how you are. So you have that aspect. And then with the over-sexualization, again, I like to continue to put things in historical context. If you were stripped of culture and reduced to this, and everything in society perpetuates this, then subconsciously in your mind, now granted, there were times in which we, and it's not our entire community like this, but there were aspects and times in which we were able to, control our own narrative. But when you live in a society that perpetuates all of these things, and there's nothing to counter it, like there's nothing, or if it is something, it may be something so minute that it cannot battle BET, MTV, and all these things, then it's like, well, shoot, how are you going to be able to rise these young girls up to be strong black women who take pride in who they are and know the value of themselves? And then for those that have been hurt, in the past, what are we doing tangibly to be able to eradicate some of the hurt? We're not even talking about it. We'll just pass it off, and a lot of the fellas do it. Say, oh, well, damaged goods, or, oh, she got these issues, she nags, she do this, she do that. And it's like, okay, well, are you looking at the environment that created this? And why haven't we...
And your own behavior that helped to create this.
Absolutely.
Right.
But again, it goes back to accountability and responsibility. So I never like to divide the genders and have this whole, men versus women type of thing. Because that's plantation mentality. We always understood that men and women were on equal playing fields, and it would take both to build, the nation. That's essentially historically how it has been. So for us to attack one another, it's like we're focusing our energy in the wrong direction, and it's counterproductive for our advancement anyway.
Well, this has been a very, very deep conversation, and I'm so enjoying it. But I'm going to take a very brief commercial break, pay a couple bills, and we'll be right back.
When's the last time someone said thanks for checking over your shoulder before changing lanes? Or gave you a pat on the back for sticking to the speed limit? Or a thumbs up for not tailgating? Probably never. Which is too bad, considering safe drivers make the roads safer for everyone. That's why Allstate appreciates safe drivers like no one else. And they show it by saving you 45% or more, along with giving you safe driving bonus checks, deductible rewards, and extra discounts with the DriveWise app. So the next time you come to a complete stop in an intersection, ask yourself, why haven't I switched to Allstate?
The Brandeo Insurance Group, your local DMV Allstate agent, can help you save 45% or more for driving safely. Call him at 410-424-0844 and get a quote today.
It pays to drive safely. Call a local Allstate agent today and find out how you can save 45% or more. Switching to Allstate is worth it.
Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability.
Welcome forward, family. So this commercial break was brought to you by the law office of Tisha S. Hillman. Right. If you are looking for an attorney in Maryland practicing in the area of family law, criminal law, or personal injury, give our office a call at 301-744-7996. You can also visit the website at www.tshillmanlaw.com. Now, Talib, we talked about a lot.
Yes.
And we've talked about a lot of issues and hurts and things that we need to get over. But in looking at it in that lens, what would you say that men actually want from one another and from our relationships, your relationships with women?
Love. I think that's what it boils down to, because whether it be within yourself or whether it be towards your spouse, or whether it be amongst your group, just the love aspect. I think we, as men, have been devoid of love for so long by those of whom we seek it from, that it's like, okay, well, what's the opposite of love? You know, I have hostility and hate, and I've seen some brothers that actually do have strong hate for women. And I'm like, well, what's the deep rooted issue? What was the issue with your moms? Like, what's going on? But like, I think that love is what we want. So it may come in the form of loyalty. It may come in the form of honesty. It may come in these various forms. But if you had to, cut at it, that's the aspect. And because we have gained a reputation for not being able to articulate what it is that we desire, we tend to show our love through action as opposed to being able to like verbally say it. But I would boil it down to that.
So love just seems like such a blanket sort of term that is difficult to define. And so I want to press you a little bit on
Okay,
that.
all right.
And find out what, because for me, if I were to define love, I would say there's a song on Everything is Love, Jay-Z and Beyonce's last album. And the song is called The Black Effect, one of my favorite songs on the album. Yeah. But there's a woman talking at the beginning of the song, and she's talking about love, and she defines it as the unconditional giving of self. And that's honestly, when I thought about that, and I thought about the people that I love and how I love them, even though there are times I want to throat chop them, for the most part, I see all of their flaws and I love them the same. And so it's, even if you have no children, even if you're not married, whatever it may be, I believe that we innately have the ability to know and to experience and to give unconditional love. Because like how I look at it is, the way that I recognize unconditional love is because I look in the mirror. That's right. I look in the mirror and I see, how do I love Tisha? I love me some me.
Love you some you, huh?
Love me some me. It's part of my problem. But anyway, that's another show. Dealing with ego. I love me some me. And we all should. Because that is how you know love. That's because you're able to look in the mirror and see your reflection as God.
Teach.
Teach. In all seriousness, you are able to look at yourself and see that I am a God. I am not the God, but I am a God. And I'm going to love me unconditionally. And I'm going to reflect that which I am. I am unconditional love. I'm going to reflect that to the people. And that's it. That's how I define it. Now I don't know about you. But that's how I look at unconditional love. Because I learned how to first love me unconditionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no disagreement. There's really no disagreement at all, because that's what it boils down to. And at the end of the day, when you have no one, you're in your house, you're in your room, you're in your home, by yourself, in solitude. What are you going to do? How do you feel about yourself? How do you continue to go on? How do you continue to press on when nobody in the world is showing you that? So having that love and affection for yourself will resonate and emanate throughout you. And then those that approach you, it's like a force field, energy field around you. So those that approach you, it's like, So I can't mess with this one, or I have to step or come correct with this one, because the radiation that's coming from them is that of love and that of self-love. So they have an understanding and a knowledge of themselves and a love for themselves. So there isn't really any half-stepping with it. You know, it's not...
Like, I did not come here to play with you hoes. You know? I came to love.
Facts. So, like, but so, yeah, that's I don't have any disagreement with you on the fact of love, but going back to your original question about what it is that we want. So if I had to give you tangible examples, it would be, say if I'm starting a business and I am going through some hardships and I don't have the confidence that I should have with regards to this venture. You know, knowledge is there, charisma may be there, but the confidence isn't there. If I turn to you as, you know, the woman in my life, will you, like the Michael Jackson song, will you be there? Will you be able to provide me, you know, the nurturing that I may need? Not from a sense of a child, but like the nurturing as far as love and appreciation. Would you be able to provide me the ability? Would you be my mirror to be able to show me and highlight the positive aspects within me when I can't see any of them? You know, and I think that as men, we may not, again, articulate that, but at the end of the day, that is an aspect that we desire. We want to be able to be vulnerable with you. And if it's an aspect where I have seen this, where women may exploit a particular vulnerability of the man, you know, trust is a big thing too. So if I see that you're doing that, there's no way that we can cross that line again. Like if I tell you I have insecurity about me, and then either you're telling friends about it, or in an argument you throw it back up at me, I'm like, oh, okay, okay, I see.
And that's a really good point, though. And I like that you highlighted the fact that not from the perspective of a child, because I think as women, sometimes because we have these nurturing qualities, most of us, not all of us do, Lord knows, but most of us do. We have this nurturing quality that sometimes we don't know how to balance it. We talked about balance on the show last week, so you should go back and listen to that. As we talked about returning to Mayat, which is a sense of balance. Because, it's levels to this thing. Because, again, like you said, the way that it takes the same level of compassion to love your child as it does your mate, but in a different way.
Right.
But it's still an unconditional giving of self. It's still, I'm looking at you as you fall and hurt your knees. And I'm not like, ha. You know what I mean? But I'm understanding that something has caused you pain. I don't want you to be in pain. I love you. And so I'm going to help you through this pain. Sure. Whether that be a child or our partner, it is the same thing, in my opinion. So I like the fact that you drew that distinction, because that's something as women that we really, really need to learn. Because I think sometimes, and I see it all the time, and it makes me cringe. It makes me cringe. And we've all seen it, ladies. And men know this, right? So where you have a woman who is emasculating her man.
Yes.
Like you guys probably saw the video a couple months ago with Tina Knowles.
Oh, yeah.
And her man. Now, here's the thing. I didn't think it was as bad as social media made it, but it was bad, right? So essentially in the video, you know, her and her husband are being interviewed or whatever, and I forgot what the question even was. But she said, do you remember what the question was?
I think it was something about flaws. They may have asked them, because I think her response was, no, you're not perfect, or something to that effect. And
she had like that look on her face that like, please,
exactly.
Like, no. And ladies, we know that look. And so our men in particular, I believe, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, because since this country's inception, and I won't even say since this country's inception, for thousands of years, our men have been the dregs of society in the eyes of the world, right? Intentional, but it's still factual. And it never escapes me with that if I'm talking about like religious texts, like the Bible says, however you treated the least of these. You know what I mean? Because my thing is, our men have been considered by the world as the least of these, and so it only makes sense that they would have problems with their ego, right? And meaning lacking self-confidence, and so it's showing up in other ways that looks like confidence, but it's not. It's actually insecurity.
Facts.
And so when you know the difference, when you know what you're actually looking at, you know how to give him what he needs, because you know, okay, this is not the lion roaring, this is a little pussycat purring. You know what I mean? I see the difference. And so when you know that I can't be in an interview with the man that I love and get this like grimaced look on my face when we talk about his flaws. Clearly he's not perfect, but to the world, I want the world to know, no, absolutely, I think my man is perfect. He is fine, he is smart, he is child. You know what I mean? Like that's what we want to portray. Because if that is the reflection that we are giving the world, what's really happening?
Heavy. So when we're talking about that Tina Knowles clip from what you said, so many things run through my mind with seeing that, because I see, again, everything that I do, I think about the historical context of it into present day, because it tends to explain. But just thinking about how, for thousands of years, like you said, how we've been under attack just as black men. And a lot of it is based off of just the envy of knowing that the black man is the original man. So it's like,
all
that constant attack is like, okay, everything that we do is going to counteract our deep insecurities about, that the original man. So when I saw that video, I'm like, wow, again, there are times and place. So when you have interactions like that, that means that typically the woman does not fully understand, one, where she's, like the environment that she's in, so their cameras and media, those things, but also understanding, her man, because at no point in time, though maybe subconsciously she did not want to portray it like that, but just having a full consciousness of understanding how that looks, and certain things in which you shouldn't do. Now, when we first dove into this, I originally was thinking that you were going to talk about remember Baltimore uprisings and the mother who was like mom of the year that drug her child.
She beat the hell out of her kid on TV.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's juxtapose these two videos, right? Because you have the same behavior, just maybe different poles. You know what I mean? So we have the universal law of polarity. So with that one, that's a child or her son, but you have the same effect of emasculization, and how you have at a young age, because I think he was like 16 or something, on a world stage, you saw what happened. He's inherently showing that warrior spirit that is within him, attempting to protect something that he values, which is his community in his mind. And then you have the mother come beat him on camera, yank him off, and then not only that, what did the media do? Parade her around, saying she's the mom of the year. Again, that whole divide and conquer thing. So what she may not have, she probably saw it as, oh, I'm protecting him because I don't want anything to happen to him. Where did she learn that behavior? Again, I don't want them to sell or kill my child, so I'm going to beat him right now so that he won't be killed later, or something to that effect. Not realizing that, you may be attempting to come from a good place, but the end result still is emasculation. And then likewise with the Tina Knowles thing, it's the same thing. So I think that we need to continue to have the conversations to understand each other and know that, okay, this is what will not be tolerated, this is what will, and this is what we need to discuss on so that we will be on the same accord whenever we show face in front of the world.
So let me ask you this. This brings us to a good point. So, we've talked about men needing love and the various forms and what that looks like. But given everything that we're talking about and the myriad of obstacles, right? I'm not going to say issues, I'm going to say obstacles that we have to overcome as people. How do we actually heal, first, Black men's relationships with one another, and then Black men's relationships with the women, your women?
Okay.
Us.
Yeah.
Right.
So one thing in traditional African culture that I pull from is the rites of passage. And during the rites of passage, and actually, many cultures have this, the rites of passage, where, there's a particular time in the human's life where they go through different challenges and learn different things to prepare them for the next stage. So one may happen when you are a child. Another one may happen when you're moving into your teen years. Another one may happen as an adult, and then as an elder. So if we, and during those rites of passages, like I said, you may go off as that age group, because this is what I know. You go off as an age group, and you may go off into the wilderness, and then as men, and then survival. You're learning survival techniques. So you may spend some time sitting at the feet of the elders or older males, and then they'll teach you the skills and all these things, and then you go. And then once you go, you learn how to survive. You learn what it takes to work together. Okay, if you know how to, I'm a vegan. I was about to say fish, but so if you know how to gather plants, right? And then the other person knows how to be a doctor, and then another one knows something else. Like, you realize which qualities each person has, and then you work together as a community to be able to continue to advance. And then you come back after you're from the wilderness with maybe a month or two or however long, and then you sit at the feet of the elders again, and then they tell you how to relate to women. Okay, this is what, now you are a man. Now you need to take a wife. This is how you treat her. These are the things in which are required as a man in this relationship, and what is expected of you, not only as a man within your relationship, but as a man for this community. And then they continue to hold you accountable and responsible. So I think that for us as men, we need to have a return to that. Now, granted, we do have little segments of that within our community, but I think that collectively we need to get on a code and just understand there are certain things. Even back in the day when you had gangs and the drug dealing and all these things, there were codes to it. You wouldn't deal to the youth, and you wouldn't deal shoot babies and all these things, right?
And that's the funny. I just not to cut you off, but I just wanted to make a point about that. Even to this day, we all know as Black people, there's a code to the streets.
Yeah.
There always has been. There always will be.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily transferable into a non-war zone. Mm-hmm. And, I understand that code was created for survival. Right. But the thing that I always want to remember is it may feel like we're in a war zone, and some of us may be. But for the most part, most of us are not. And so to behave, right, with this animal instinct that's constantly set on, I got to survive by any means necessary, right? Now, again, there's levels to this. There's levels to this. Hear what I'm saying? But to be at a place where we are harming ourselves is like looking in a mirror and hating the reflection.
It is. It is. And that's what we've been taught. We've been taught to hate the image that we see. If you think about it, again, with the propaganda in the media, everything in the media that is portrayed, for the most part, shows us in a negative light. You turn on the news, and what do you see? Out of the 8 stories that they show, 5 of them probably are talking about black folks, and then 3 of them are crimes, and then the other 2 may be dropping out of school. There are no consistent positive images in mainstream media. We do have different networks and different stations that we own and operate and create. But again, we haven't aggregated our money enough to fully support these institutions so that we can consistently get this from the child's, from youth up into eldership. But if you're always indoctrinated with this mentality, then that's how you're going to act. America, if you look at, so let me ask you a question about the how we relate to women, because I can get off. I think how we eventually will relate to women is, again, we have to have a knowledge and understanding of ourselves first. Because how can I offer you love if I don't know what it is or I've never seen it, and I don't like it, don't have it within me? You know, I would be doing you a disservice because you'll be wasting time messing with me, and I'm doing myself a disservice because I'm not fully availing myself to you. So I think first, like you said, it is levels to this. We need to get ourselves in order first, and then be able to build with a woman and understand her ins and outs and with her likes and dislikes, what it is to be a man and what am I supposed to provide to you. You know, that love and affection, the times in which you're tired, providing you relaxation, doing whatever is necessary to make sure that you are well, mind, body, and soul. So I think that for us to be able to reach that point, we have to understand who we are and our responsibilities, and that way we can appropriately provide you what you would need.
So you mean to tell me that a man's responsibility is not to just make it rain on, and make it rain on him?
That's a grown boy's responsibility.
I had a conversation the other day, and my mom, she's gonna be mad at me for saying this, but I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
Mama, you know you was wrong. But anyway, these are the type of messaging though that we give our young girls. Like, when we talk about what we need from each other, I was talking to my mom the other day about, like, going to spend time with someone or whatever, and, and I can't say what she said, but in essence, she said, if you're going to give them anything, you make sure you get some money. And I said, Mama, you can't say stuff like that. You're trying to turn these little girls into prostitutes. And she's just like, you got the greatest jewel in the world, so don't give it away for free. Now, I understand the sentiment. I really do. Because on some level, that's absolutely true. But on another level, I think parents, we got to be careful. And sisters, we got to be careful what we communicate to one another. Because no, this isn't about selling my body or selling any of our bodies for money. That's not what it's about. But, so Mama, oh my God. Anyway, I just can't stop laughing because if you know my mom, you know that this is how she talks. But what I do understand about that though is you got to have a sense of self-worth.
Yes. You
cannot give of yourself and simply be dealing with an emotional vampire, because they will suck and suck and suck your energy and your currency from your soul until you are dead.
Facts.
And so if you are dealing with people who drain you of your energy, they are emotional vampires, and they are taking your currency, which is the equivalent of taking your money and playing with my money, Smokey. Like, we don't do that, right? So you don't play with people's currency. So if you don't have the energy to replenish from what you are taking, don't take of that energy, whether it be someone's money, their time, their essence, whatever it may be, unless you are willing and able to actually replenish at that time.
Sure. And I would just, to add on to that, those who are watching, the listeners, the audience, I would challenge you to reach out to a lot of these young sisters and young brothers and be able to take them under your wing and help to nurture and develop them to understand what it is not to be an energy vampire, but to actually have self-love and even a knowledge of self, because we oftentimes sit back and go in basically on the youth, the younger generation, about what they are not doing, but who is there to teach them what they should be doing? You know, a lot of it falls at our feet and on our laps as well, because we've allowed, how many times have we walked past young brothers or young sisters and seen them doing self-destructive behavior and not check them on it? Maybe afraid or saying, oh, that's not my place or that ain't my child. So you can't complain about the conditions of your environment and not do anything to help eradicate those conditions. It's like someone who has, who makes a pile of money in another neighborhood that they grew up in a neighborhood, they left, made money outside of there, and then is running down talking about this neighborhood. Well, the money that's supposed to be in the neighborhood that you came from is out into another neighborhood, and you're not doing anything to build up that neighborhood, so how can you run it down? Likewise with the youth, and with this whole notion of love and relationships, you know, you can't run down these toxic relationships if you have the knowledge of what it is to be in a relationship that is beneficial and productive and progressive, and you don't impart that wisdom and knowledge upon those individuals. You actually become worse than those that may intentionally try to destroy what that is, that black love.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. So I just want to say thank you so much to Attorney Talib Sabra for joining us today and for such an amazing conversation. Talib, do you want to tell the people how they can contact you if they're interested in your legal services?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder, CEO of the Sabra firm, www.thesabefirm.com. Visit me there. 240-468-7884 is my phone number. And we have a Facebook page, the Sabra Firm. So yeah, and I do personal injury, educational law, civil rights, human rights, and special ed law.
Well, thank you so much. Be sure to tune in next week. And as always, remember, you don't have to carry all the bags that you've been given. We have brothers, we have friends, we have people that love us, that are there to help us in this journey called life, to carry all of the bags that we've been given. Sometimes we can't choose the bags that we've been given, but we can certainly choose whether or not we're going to carry them all by ourselves. So it's not about keeping yourself hidden under the veil of all of the responsibilities that you have, but it's really finding your own authenticity underneath the needs that where you've buried yourself under the needs of others. That's where you find your authentic self. Until next time.
State and local government exercise very important functions in the United States. They are responsible for creating state legislation, which can become state law. They plan and pay for roads, run public schools, parks and libraries, provide water and utilities, and organize law enforcement, elections, and much more. As citizens, local government is more easily obtainable and are the means in which we communicate to the federal government. This is why it is important that we vote in more than just primary presidential elections. Midterm and local elections are just as, if not more, important for our communities and its efficiency. Resistance is local. Criminal justice reform is local. Gentrification is local. And the right to vote is a privilege that once was not granted to all citizens because of their gender, race, or ethnicity. So today, we are all afforded this right, and we should vote at